Good morning. So one of the things that I don't talk about that often when I teach is that I actually started my career 30 years ago, nearly now, which is crazy to say, as a pre and postnatal massage therapist, where I studied at the Swedish Institute in New York, which at the time happened to be Jeffrey Yuen's acupuncture school. And so a huge part of that training was shiatsu massage, and there just happened to be a lot of instructors who were specializing in pre and postnatal, as well as doulas and midwives teaching in the program. So my very early education was all about pregnancy and birth, and the fertility stuff kind of came in later. But I started as a doula, really attending births for many years before I got my acupuncture license. And I think that that is the thing that has influenced my acupuncture practice, probably more than anything else. Learning the extent to which women in our culture are not supported, either prenatally, preconception-wise, or postpartum. And that if we as practitioners can learn to come at this phase in someone's life from the place, from the mindset of a doula, and what that really means is somebody who is fully present to provide support and interpretation of the things that are going on in a way that allows them to stay relatively calm through a process that can sometimes be really unnerving. And so that is what I hope to convey across this next series of courses that I'm offering about pregnancy, that it's not just about, learning the tests and learning the things that they're going through allopathically and then how to line up treatments with that. But it's actually taking on a larger role with our patients insofar as making yourself available to be a presence for them to bounce things off of. And the more you understand from the perspective of what they're going through with their OBGYN or their midwife, or if there any complications should arise, that you're able to help them kind of work through those things, come up with as natural a process or an approach that as they are comfortable with, but also support whatever medical intervention they may require, that it's really, it's a tremendous way to connect with patients, and a really supportive and, wonderful way to practice and to help. I'm going to try to advance my slides now. Okay. We're going to start talking today about conscious conception. And what does that even mean? It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. What does it mean to pause before becoming pregnant and really prepare, both physically as well as on a psycho-emotional level, for what is about to shift and change around the process of becoming a parent? So conscious conception can be a lot of things, but this is what it is to me. It's sometimes referred to also as the 0 trimester, preconception period. So it's really a period of time that we're defining. I define it as at least 3 months prior to conception, because that's what we want to do insofar as optimizing the health of the both parties involved, as well as really try to replete the resources of the person who's going to be carrying the pregnancy. So it's a period of time prior to gestation where a couple or an individual, if they're choosing to conceive it on their own, deliberately undergoes a series of physical, emotional, and spiritual processes in preparation for becoming pregnant and moving into parenthood. So these may include any number of the following things: biomedical health and reproductive evaluation and treatment if it's necessary. And it is in part our job to know when it's necessary and recommend further evaluation. As well as considering and evaluating care providers that they intend to use once they become pregnant and give birth, and thinking about that in advance so that they're not finding themselves stuck with a provider that they maybe don't like or don't resonate with, and doesn't align with the way that they're hoping to go through the process. Changes and improvements to the diet, stopping or dramatically reducing harmful substances like alcohol, cannabis, obviously any illicit drugs, cessation of birth control or any medications that might be impeding fertility, and then regulation of the cycle once those things are stopped. It's also about taking time to ensure that the partners are both in alignment and working through relationship issues that could interfere with those shared goals, because anybody who works with fertility patients knows that this is a time of tremendous strain potentially on a relationship, as is the postpartum period. And so we want to make sure that people are in a good place and not going into this thinking like, oh, this pregnancy is going to, rescue my marriage or something like that, that work needs to happen ahead of the pregnancy so that it doesn't become a really stressful time. And then prenatal acupuncture, functional medicine, whatever holistic care they're choosing to receive. It could be chiropractic care, it could be therapy, whatever is necessary to help them optimize their own reproductive health by also optimizing their mental health as well as their physiology. So as a practitioner saying, okay, we're going to go through this time of conscious conception, what we're really working with our patients to do is to get them to slow down a little bit, to make space in their lives for a baby. And we all live in different places, and culturally there are different probably, pressures and rhythms around the timing of childbearing. Where I live in Los Angeles, and I think in pretty much any major city in the US and probably across most of the globe at this point, women are postponing childbearing until later, oftentimes into their late 30s, into their early 40s. And in that process, they are building big lives for themselves, right? Over that period of time, they have careers, they are maybe climbing a corporate ladder and they've climbed way up to the top of it, or they're business owners and their business is like a baby that takes up all their time and energy. They have been living their life in a way that isn't really in alignment with the sort of maternal archetype, which has a lot to do with slowing down, making space for somebody else to be a priority over ourselves, or the things that we do to build ourselves, like our jobs and our social lives and our, physical physiology, or like our physical presentation, our body type, or whatever that may be. So starting to work with people to slow down a little bit and recognize some of the things and recognize some of the patterns that they have in place, which are not necessarily in total alignment with becoming moms. And again, this isn't going to be the case for everybody. And wherever you are culturally, you may be like, that doesn't happen here. And that's great. But in big cities where you have kind of executive type A patient bases, there's going to be a lot of feeling like, I'm just going to do IVF real quick and we'll do a transfer, because I have a business trip on that day and a big board retreat on this day. Like they're going to squeeze in pregnancy in between these big events in their life. And oftentimes it just doesn't quite work out that way. And they need to be able to shift and get back to a place of like, I'm going to be receptive to when this happens versus trying to strong arm it into happening when I want it to. And that comes from that notion of embracing the feminine archetype, which is much more about receptivity. It's more yin. It's about slowing down and taking things in versus forcing things to happen, which is a much more yang archetypal way of living in the world. And it is the way in which many women have come to exist, because we have been pushing so hard for, decades and decades and decades to achieve a sense of equality. And in the process of doing that, we've had to abandon ourselves over and over again. There's also this notion of being open to the heavenly mandate. Being open to the heavenly mandate just essentially means that we are willing to be open to receiving that which whatever insert, spiritual thing here, whether that's the Tao or the cosmos, or for some people it's God, but making space to receive that which is intended for us versus, again, strong arming that which we want and kind of like jamming it through and forcing it to happen or attempting to do so, which often doesn't work. So it's that sense of being open to what the universe has in store and letting go of ego and letting go of a rigid timeline around things and just saying, I'm just here doing what I can to make myself receptive to having this experience, because that's what I would like to have happen next in my life. And also that within that, for people who are in partnerships, to really make this a time of focusing on intimacy and focusing on connection and growing the connection between those two people with the goal of bringing a baby in and starting a family together, as opposed to that also sort of calculated, controlled, rigid, like we have to have sex right now because I'm ovulating, or I just got a positive. And then instead it's much more about how within that, even if it's just during that fertile window, although ideally we want people to be connecting all the time, as opposed to just focusing in on that one period of time. But even if that's all they're able to do, that week is not just about like, we have to have sex twice a day and, you know, nothing else is part of the equation, but rather that it's a time for, you know, I call it with my patients date week. Forget about that you're trying to make a baby. Connect with your partner, make plans every night, make dinner together, watch a movie, have a sense of this being about bringing yourselves closer together in the name of bringing in a child.